You don't try to climb something that's like literally impossible. You have to know that you could get to the top. In the climate movement, we need to do the same. When we can lead with hope, everybody can be a part of it.
You know, I think a lot about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, and I think about how it sucks. It's terrible. But it always paid off and worked to my advantage every single time. You realize you can do stuff you never thought you could.
When you live with a mental illness, you think about your mind all the time. At least I did, because there were times I felt that it was betraying me. While people were fighting for climate change in the streets, I started realizing that we also had to fight for climate change in people's minds. I want climate change to be a concept inextricably linked to hope and empowerment and opportunity, not despair and gloom. Because when we can lead with hope, everybody can be a part of it. When you live with a mental illness, I think, if it taught me anything, it's that we're here to fight. I fought for my life, and we're fighting in this movement. It's given me a clarity and an immediacy that I harness every day. You find that in the range in Alaska. And when you get up on a mountain, you like scratch and claw your way to the top.
That's to take my meds.
In high school, I started getting into student organizing. There was a guy running for office who was really inspiring to me, and his name was Barack Obama. Like a lot of young people, we followed Obama around. And after college, I became a political appointee at the White House under his administration, which was a total dream. Entering President Obama's second term, climate change became one of his highest priorities.
Today, the White House and the EPA is announcing what is really the central pillar of the global warming agenda.
The nation that leads in the creation of a clean energy economy will be the nation that leads the 21st century global economy.
The White House Climate Team, we were this organization that was coordinating across federal agencies on implementing his climate action plan. Paris Climate Agreement, the Clean Power Plan, fuel efficiency standards for heavy-duty vehicles.
We have set in motion a national policy aimed at both increasing gas mileage and decreasing greenhouse gas pollution.
You know, I remember always having this feeling like, do not forget why we're here. The American people sent us here. And we need to do everything we can to try and make their lives better while we're here.
Our work here and now gave future generations cleaner air and cleaner water and a more sustainable planet.
I got bipolar disorder probably around my mid-teens and proceeded to live with an untreated mental illness for about a decade. That first day I got that diagnosis, that was my second day of work at the White House. And I just remember that walk back to the office, being horrified, not knowing what was ahead, There was no excuse for not being there, not being like present, not getting stuff done, not working the hours. I don't feel like it held me back, but it made it really hard. I thought I'd last a year at the White House. You know, a lot of people go in for about a year and leave. I was so tired. I was so sleep deprived. I remember thinking, soon enough, this chapter will close and I'll wake up from this dream. But not quite yet. And that not quite yet went on for 4 years.
We woke up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning and just got to the foot of the mountain and are about to go over this section.
It was when I was living in DC that I got into mountaineering. We'd have 1 week in August when Congress was in recess, and I would live off that for the rest of the year.
We got back at what time?
8:45?
8:45, and we woke up.
Gone.
Oh, and our tent was gone.
I did trips to climb in the Cascades and the North Cascades and just fell in love with it and knew this is what I want to be doing. But it was so hard because I was in DC and there's no space for anything else. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was the biggest and greatest privilege of my life. At the same time, though, while I was living out that dream, I felt I had another dream and it was dying. For political appointees, the president will actually do a departure thank you. You get to go into the Oval Office with your family and he thanks you for your service. And it's this extraordinary moment and experience. I went into the Oval Office with my family. It's just this overwhelming presence. He thanked me for my service, and then he was saying like, okay, what's next? I don't know why I didn't prepare the answer to that question. It's such an obvious question he's gonna ask you. And I didn't understand what he was saying, and so I was just like, oh, I'm gonna go climb some mountains. and he was like, okay, cool. And it took me a second to realize, oh no, he's asking about like, what's the next chapter? And I was like, oh, obviously gonna continue my work in climate. And he goes, okay, good. We expect you back in this fight.
Thank you all so much for being here today.
You're going to hear from artists, cultural workers, and leaders.
We are chatting all things climate communication with Molly Kawahata.
Molly Kawahata.
I'm Molly Kawahata. The system we are forced to live under is based in fossil fuels. Climate change is not the fault of everyday people. The fossil fuel industry is what we're up against. Let's decarbonize the electricity sector. Let's electrify the transportation sector. Voting is like the baseline. I'm saying register people to vote. Register people to vote. Register people to vote. Help us expand the electorate. When you do that, climate candidates get elected. When climate candidates get elected, systemic change is put into place. I think when I was first starting to climb, if not before, I had heard that Alaska is the place you go to climb not necessarily huge mountains, but steep and technical ones. And I think that was the moment it started. Alaska is the only place I want to focus my climbing. I've always known that. I certainly didn't have the skills to climb there. I just realized I needed to get way better at ice climbing than I was. And that was my breakthrough, was spending a lot of time on steep water ice.
Developing as an ice climber, I got to meet Kitty Calhoun. She's like a legendary alpinist who has done incredible climbs in Alaska, in the Himalaya, and also has this deep devotion to climate change and social justice.
I'm like obsessed with the Alaska Range. I've always wanted to climb there. I've climbed in like other parts of Alaska, but like never there. And so this is like, I'm very excited for this and wanted to get into more technical stuff. And I don't really feel like I know where I am. Like I don't really feel like I can trust my own judgment on these things. So I think it'll be really helpful if you can actually like evaluate how efficiently I'm moving. I hate to tell you this, but you have to become your own judge.
Because you can't rely on somebody else for your own safety. And you have to know, and you have to speak up, because sometimes you're right, even if you have less experience. Alpinism is like a chess game. It's not just physical. So you have to, it's strategy. So you have to weigh so many different factors, like not only your technical skills, but also how well you're adapting to altitude, the weather, navigation, your partner's strengths and weaknesses. I mean, there are so many things that all go together. And so it doesn't matter if you could be the best climber in the world, but you don't summit because you didn't recognize one of the factors that was essential to success. I wanted to ask you more about what you've done with climate change.
I'm trying to basically like change how we talk about climate change in a way that can make it more relevant to everyday people. I think we're not doing that. And I think when people are like, why don't more people care about climate change? I don't think that's their fault. The average person doesn't have the luxury about thinking about things happening thousands and thousands of miles away. Like,
right.
I care about glaciers melting the Arctic, but like a mom working 2 jobs doesn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
So how we can basically make it like more part of people's everyday life for them to understand how this impacts them. This is not about fighting climate change so we can keep climbing, fighting climate change so we can keep skiing, right? It's about people.
Morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I'm excited to climb today. I came to Denver in 2008 for the Democratic National Convention, and that's the extent of my experience in this beautiful state, but it's gorgeous.
So I think could just wrap off those double trees there, the V trees, and climb. Basically, it's a ramp going, and then we could belay right where that guy is. All right, rope.
Sorry, ice, sorry. I didn't realize it's so fragile here. Wow. I love seeing these swords from below. No rocks look like this.
If you were to climb here, there's a little bit of a dihedral. And then you just break it down and there's ramps.
Woo. Okay.
Nice.
Woo.
Yeah.
Whoa! Ice is hard up here. Yeah, you're on belay, kitty!
Super glad that I got to meet Molly and climb with her before going to Alaska. I definitely love to support her, encourage her, but you know, she's got a mind of her own. I think she has the skills, but we're gonna have to see. She might have to change her objectives, but no matter what, it's gonna be a good trip.
You good? You're good?
Yeah.
Okay, you're off belay.
The more you can practice just a little softer touch.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like you've been taught by a man.
I have. Yeah. Can you tell?
Yes.
I totally have.
That hard swing you have, number one, it uses way more energy than you need to use. Number two, if the ice is really, really brittle, it's gonna dinner plate. That's why a lot of times I'll feel for the sweet spot. You just tap it a little bit and then you go like that and set it.
You know, I think we need to try to keep learning as we grow. Sure, I have some things to teach her, but I think she has a lot to teach me in terms of how she interacts with the world today with the tools that she has that I didn't have when I was growing up.
Hi.
Hi. It's so nice to meet you. I'm just gonna dive right in. I've been following the incredible work that you've been doing, mostly following you on social media, specifically your work around climate messaging. Why I started writing about the climate is it felt like this desperation for I would do anything for my children. You were speaking about it in such a way that I'd never heard anybody speak about.
You know, I think the environmental movement, it's gotten us far and it's done a lot of really good things. But I also think it's led us in some directions that are misplaced.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what we're doing to try and focus on solving the climate crisis, it comes down to what's the most effective way for us to get systemic change.
And how would you answer that? What's the most effective way to get systemic change?
I mean, it's government action, it's policy. We can figure out how to get more renewable energy online, more energy storage, more transmission and distribution built in order to clean up the grid.
Yeah.
So that whenever somebody uses electricity at night, it's going to be coming from a cleaner grid.
I don't know if you're comfortable talking about when did you first notice this darkness?
Started experiencing depression in my teenage years, and I got misdiagnosed with depression, but it turned out it was actually bipolar disorder. When I got treatment, which on one hand I was so grateful for because the suffering was more than I could handle sometimes. But at the same time, getting treatment took away those things, but it also took away the extremes I lived in all the time.
It sounds like though that you get to experience that high from adrenaline from climbing.
Yeah. Yeah. It could actually look like it's mimicking bipolar disorder in a lot of ways. It does give me what feels like a really extreme experience of the spectrum of emotion, of security, of life. I just feel tired. I feel like I just don't want to move. I think it's okay to be like this. We don't think it's okay. I lived years thinking it wasn't okay. Not really accepting myself, you know. So in bipolar disorder, one common symptom is black and white thinking. It makes it really hard for me to understand nuance and abstractions. And so it's hard to understand kind of gray areas, even though that's what life is. That affects kind of every component of your life, relationships, every component. With treatment, therapy, and medication, you kind of learn to better understand two things can be true. But once you kind of get past that in treatment, you're kind of left with this sort of extreme personality. I think a lot of people would kind of stray away from that. But I know that if I didn't have bipolar disorder, I would not climb mountains and I would not have gotten to work at the White House. I was trying to understand how all of the sectors of my life work together. I knew they had something in common, climate change and bipolar disorder and Alaska, but I didn't know what. They're so different. Connection's not obvious. And so then I wrote this, and it kind of started to make some sense to me. When you have a mental illness, you think about your mind all the time. I think that obsession led me to contemplate how to fix climate change by harnessing the power of the human mind. We can't address the climate crisis without systemic change. We can't get systemic change without policy. And we can't get policy until we get the public on board, and we can't get them on board until they feel something. That's how all these things connect. These things make us fundamentally human.
I don't
don't cook, and so I eat it just so I don't die. Because otherwise, like, you're not getting nutrition. It's disgusting. I hate doing it, but I force it. You develop habits like this when you work at the White House. And then you get your life back, you know? When you leave and you live the life of a normal civilian, but I just started pursuing mountain climbing and working full time, and there's really nothing in between. There's no space in between, you know? Hi, Grace. Hi, am I supposed to be online right now? Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm logging in. I'm ready. I'm really excited to talk to them about career day. I don't even have a charger. I'm gonna try another computer. I'm trying another computer and the computer's freezing. Okay, fingers crossed. No, it doesn't work.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so sorry for the delay. I was having technical challenges. I work in clean energy in the tech sector, and also outside of that do a lot of climate work on communications and narratives.
So what do you think is the best and most efficient way to mobilize and inform people about climate science and change?
A lot of the climate problem, I believe, is a communications problem. This is the work of George Lakoff at UC Berkeley, who's a really cool, if you're interested in this, read The Political Mind by him, great book. When you have a thought in your brain, it fires a web of neurons. And when you have a thought, that thought again, it fires that same web of neurons again, and that web grows stronger. And there's this term in neuroscience that if you've taken that course, you've definitely heard, neurons that fire together, wire together. So we have to really think about what climate frames we are using in order to lead this discussion. There's this common climate frame that's put out there that says climate action hurts the economy. This is an anti-climate narrative. I can go stand next to that guy and I can yell, no, climate action does not hurt the economy. But what am I still doing? I'm wiring in your brain climate action and a hurt economy. I'm doing the exact same thing. When I say not, it has a negligible impact. So what I need to do instead of responding to that is I need to reframe. I need to say something like, join me in fighting climate change for the health and well-being of our children. When we reframe this in terms of public health, we did find at the White House that is the most effective way to talk about climate change. By miles. By miles. That's how you get everyday people to care. We need more young people in this fight. I know you guys are like bright, passionate people who really care about stuff, and we would love to have you in this movement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
The Northern Rockies is a place that has just completely stolen my heart. As I progressed on the steep water ice of that canyon, like more and more mountain objectives opened up to me. And I had that canyon and the people inside it to thank for that. There's nowhere else that I progressed more as a climber or felt a deeper sense of belonging.
When you were working on the Ohio campaign, did you have a sense of dread as you kind of did more and more work on it?
It was kind of a mix of feeling like something's happening in the country and
We're not fully
we
tuned
might
in.
elect a really extreme candidate, and then also just being like, there's no way. That election obviously didn't go to the way it hoped, but, you know, it turned out okay with this recent election, and you know, a lot of people were doing pretty amazing stuff to make that happen, and young people really got organized in the last 8 years, and
Well, also you had this creation of basically a climate action engine that isn't entirely dependent on the federal government.
So I met up with Rashad, who's a really impressive climber and works in climate policy. And I've been talking to a lot of like activists who do work from the outside, and he's definitely somebody who's doing the systemic change we talk about a lot.
My program focuses on helping cities essentially make good on their clean energy goals. The work of our electricity program recently has basically shown how renewables, energy storage can often be cheaper than building new gas capacity. So tell me a bit more about your work right now.
my focus has really become trying to figure out how we can get more everyday people involved. because it hasn't been inclusive, it hasn't been welcoming. What I started doing is like figuring out how do we leverage psychology and neuroscience to get people to be on board with climate. We fault the everyday person for not caring, but I really think we didn't reach them. When you give people a doom and gloom scenario, people think it scares them in action, but that's not how people respond to psychology, to those emotions. Fear, guilt doesn't make you act, it makes you sit back. I think mitigation as a narrative is a really uplifting and inspiring one, and certainly been my experience in that space. We're building the clean energy economy, we're putting people back to work. If people can see climate change as opportunity, and we can frame that way in their brains, then there's huge capacity for, I think, broadening the movement.
Doing the work day to day, I think I vacillate between being really, really daunted by the scale of the challenge.
Yeah.
But also the feeling that there's no more vital, important work and nothing I would rather be doing with my life.
Okay, so I'm thinking I'm just gonna go up through this little ice dihedral and then traverse left a little bit. Yep. Right at that column, and then get a good stick in and go over that bulge. I'm a little nervous, but I'm always nervous before I lead routes, so.
You should be nervous. It's kind of a natural reaction.
Yeah.
Leading anything on ice, I think. If you're not nervous, you're doing it wrong. Enjoy.
Thank you.
When I really started out in the Northern Rockies, I was like, I want to get better at like following in the movement, but like, I don't think I'll ever be leading water ice. I think it was one of those things where that's your dream, but deep down, you don't think it'll ever happen. It's hard to want something that bad and then to go after it because you might not get there. Woo! Ugh.
Nice, Molly.
Hey! Whew, snowy! You're on belay.
Sweet. Climbing.
Climb on.
We went to the other side of the canyon to what is like a pretty well-known, incredible ice climb. I think it's like one of the crown jewels of that canyon.
Nice, Rashad.
Yeah.
You're doing awesome. You look great.
So pretty.
I was like, wait a second. I think I might be able to lead this.
You're supposed to wait until you're on the route to panic, but I'm just going for it now.
Try to look for swings and sticks in front of you, Molly. Just try to keep that tripod shape.
I placed a lot in the bottom.
You're doing great.
My tools would get really stuck because I didn't yet have the rhythm of like using my momentum to pull them out. If you pull hard enough, you like kind of worry you're gonna pull yourself off the ice. And again, the rule in ice climbing is not to fall.
Ah! I feel pretty insecure here.
Okay, I'm watching you close.
What the f? Toward the top, I kick in my right foot and it's not going in. And I like look down and then I'm like, oh my God. My crampon is hanging from my ankle.
Holy sh**, what the f just happened here? I'm so embarrassed.
And you know what, Molly? You just managed the situation. Fucking crushed it.
One thing about ice I've learned is like, you think you have something down, but you don't. And you never know how you're gonna do, and sometimes you do better than you think, and sometimes you do way worse than you think. I'm annoyed at myself, like I should have just, I wish I just climbed it like.
I mean, think about what you accomplished, right? Like, you had a gear up, you didn't panic, you didn't whip.
Yeah, I didn't
You
whip.
put in a screw.
Yeah.
You put in a screw, you dealt with it, and you kept going. Nice thing is, you're gonna be back in highlight. This thing's gonna reform next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and hopefully for many years after that, as long as we solve the climate crisis.
The time I spent there, it just opened up Alaska for me. All these routes I'd read about and admired and just thought, that would be so cool, but like, obviously, I don't have the skill for that. I don't have the experience for that. And then to realize, spending so much time there, that I can actually climb some of these routes.
So I was reading this article about the outdoor industry and how athletes and brands are trying to get serious about their carbon footprint. And it actually linked to carbon footprint calculator. It was actually made by UC Berkeley. Right next door to Berkeley actually is Richmond, California, which is a community that lives in the shadow of a Chevron refinery.
A massive fire at a Chevron refinery in Richmond, California sent toxic smoke billowing into the air.
Breaking news out of Richmond. A spill at the Chevron refinery threatening the health of the bay and the people near it tonight.
They're called a frontline community. Primarily a community of color, as they often are. Over 14% of that community lives in poverty. Because they ask for my zip code and my income, I'm going through this based on the US Census data of an average person that lives in Richmond, California. I'm putting in the median income of somebody who works in retail there. All right, here are the recommendations it gives me. Are you ready? Buy a more efficient vehicle. Purchase an alternative fuel vehicle. Purchase a hybrid vehicle. Telecommute to work. Purchase a tankless water heater, purchase a high-efficiency cooling system. All of these things require immense upfront costs. I mean, who are the types of people that can follow these? They're telling me turn off lights. Is that the solution here? If I use electricity at night, am I polluting? This calculator tells me yes. It's taking a system based in fossil fuels and it's apportioning blame onto the end users who are forced to use it. That's why the carbon footprint itself is a complete joke. They're talking to a specific, extraordinarily privileged, wealthy group of people in America. This concept of an individual carbon footprint, it was popularized by British Petroleum, or BP. We've all been fed a lie. These people have been fed a lie, so much so that they went and made one themselves. People say policies don't have impact, campaigns don't have impact. I mean, they can change the entire fabric of the country.
Well, this is a barrack house right here. That White House.
So this is an internment house that was brought here.
And this way here, the train station where they were dropped off.
My whole life growing up, we had this painting on the wall. It was a watercolor that featured snow and barracks and two kind of lonely figures. And I just thought the mountains were beautiful. In my early 20s, I came home, and so I kind of saw it for fresh eyes, and it hit me what it was of. And I felt really dumb. It was a painting of the internment camp in Topaz, Utah, which is where my grandparents and whole family was interned. And this is when a lot of Japanese Americans were imprisoned on their own soil during World War II. Just growing up knowing that my family was imprisoned on their own soil, like, I think that impacted me in going into politics, because you just see how impactful policies can be.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. All of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move.
It's really desolate around, and I just can't quite comprehend what it would be like to be on a train going in there. It's painful to think about.
We're here.
Wow, they were in...
Nothing.
They have a little bit of like the layout of where things were, and I could see the block where my family lived.
So this is the entrance to where the Kawahatas used to live. You can see this is all debris from the interior of the building, and then where Marlene's standing over there are some of the old gardens.
Wow, it's literally the exact mountain. Look, that's a rounded top.
I realized that in the painting, that was where my grandfather lived. That was his barrack.
This is grandfather Kiyozu Kawahata, who immigrated from Japan when he was 19. My grandmother is the only one with dark glasses right here. She looks like a cool cat. And they used the boilers from the latrines and converted them into forges. And they would make swords. This is like the emblem of their resistance.
That whole thing happened because of a guy who signed something in the same building I worked in at the White House. I've always just like known it's part of my family's story. It's like uncomfortable, like you can't endure the discomfort, and so you just want to shut it down. But you have to look clear-eyed. You have to look at what's a problem, what needs to change, what our history is, what the truth is. You cannot shield your eyes from it. That was a policy. Policies change everything. There's some truth to the fact that I don't think it's quite healthy. Passion, I think, is something you can run with. Obsession is something you have to make sure you rein in a little bit. And I'd say Alaska falls squarely into the latter category, so something I've been trying to be conscious of. One of, I think, the privileges of having bipolar disorder is that if most people live up in this range, the high and the low, I get to see what it's like living in this range. This is where I live. And there is the high and the low, like there is tremendous suffering on both ends. Tremendous suffering. But I've gotten to see what it's like to stand at that edge and peek over the cliff. And it's really scary out there, but there's something extraordinary about getting to experience that. I think a lot of alpinism is actively seeking out circumstances that are going to deprive you of your needs. And it can be as simple as rationing food, hunger, thirst, human needs, but also, you know, the ability to walk straight, not hallucinate, you know, like not freeze, you know, just live a normal, comfortable, ordinary life. You deprive yourself of those needs actively until you find yourself here. And you look over that cliff. And it's scary. But you do it kind of because of that too. Not in spite of it, because of it.
I'm supposed to be taking the day off, but like, I feel like I should still be checking my email. I hate the idea of like feeling like you're like letting down your team, you know? Especially when you're like gearing up for an Alaska expedition, you're like, oh, it'd be so nice if I were one of those dirtbags that didn't work and I could just plan this full time. Because it's like a full-time job, but, you know, I still work and I care a lot about my job. I need to pack today and do several errands. Okay, I always struggle with like where to start. Here's my crevasse rescue setup. Oh, boo! Parkas for your water bottle. Ridiculous mitts like these. There's so many things that are unique to Alaska climbing. And that's why I like it. It's so specialized. I'm gonna be happy I have this. For Alaska, you have like a menu of options. You don't get your heart set on one climb. See, you can see. This year, you know, I just ice climbed as much as I could. That opened up a lot of new routes for me. So this is what we're looking at. Grade 4, 85-degree ice. This can be 25 hours. 14 up, down 5, approach 3. Plus approach back. So I'd climbed with Kitty and Yurei. She ended up going with me to Alaska. We flew into Anchorage and then got into Talkeetna, loaded up into Talkeetna Air Taxi Otter, and flew into the range. And that flight is one of the most mind-blowing experiences I've ever had. I have never seen the mountains like that. I had no reference point because no mountain range can compare to it. And I don't think there's any place where I could have fully prepared until I went there. Paul lands us on the glacier, and that was like my brain going on overload. Oh my God! The scale is unrelatable.
The thing is that this is like being at the beach. Oh, it's just right over there. That won't take very long. And then, you know, like an hour later, it looks like that same distance. So it's like the distances are totally deceiving.
Thanks, Paul. We get out, unload our gear, and then we have to set up camp, which is quite laborious at the Alaska range. You're not climbing that day, you're not doing your objective, but like, it's work. It's labor.
We still have to set up a cook tent pyramid and melt some water and make some dinner and get some sleep and get up and do it all over again.
The weather was just super inconsistent. We're getting these reports that are saying it's this, but it might be this, but it's changing, and route conditions are being impacted by that. It goes on the left. At one point, it clears, and you can see down into the glacier, and you can see the route. We climb in the middle of the night. You want to know exactly what the route looks like and where it is, and neither of us had been on it, and so we made a decision that we were just going to go scout.
we went to the foot of the mountain and dug a cache where we could leave a rack of screws, ice tools, helmets. It's the first time I saw the route from the bottom. You look up and you're like, that's really steep. It's steep. I just think that doesn't look like the mountains I've climbed before.
This is an intense route.
It felt kind of menacing with the weather. The ice is kind of a different color and there's this huge gaping bergschrund.
There's something about the Alaska range. The mountains are so extremely different that I think I had zero reference point. Everything is just bigger, scarier, more difficult, more intense. The weather is crazier, it's steeper, there's more objective risk. I don't like this. I know it's still good and I know I still should do it, but I don't like it.
I don't know what's going on with me. Like, I don't know why I'm freaking out in my tent when no one's around, you know? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually know exactly why.
Probably because you don't understand, and so that makes you just nervous. You don't seem scared, you're just not comfortable because it's something that you haven't experienced before. You're trying to figure out what the hell it is.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying getting to know Molly as a friend, you know? Not just a climbing partner, but somebody that I enjoy discussing issues with and hearing things from her perspective. I talk about, like, you know, being a minimalist and how that served me well in the mountains, you know, and so that you don't use it up, take it, or consume it all, so you have something left behind.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the same thing goes for the earth, you know, in terms of long-term sustainability, but, you know, in terms of the big picture, like, people are like, yeah, but what difference does one person make?
70% of carbon emissions come from 100 companies. And your carbon footprint is on average 16 to 17 tons of carbon a year. Nobody can compete with the fossil fuel industry in their own lives. Carbon footprint's just not big enough.
But it would be hypocritical in terms of, I'm voting for this person because of they recognize climate change, but I'm not changing the way I personally live my life. That sort of feels inconsistent in terms of if you live through your values.
I'm a huge advocate for anybody that wants to make those changes in their own life should. It's a tremendous privilege to be able to afford to make those changes, to have the time, the energy, and the resources. People who are greening their lives, they want to do more, which is great. They're probably already voting, right?
Yeah, right.
Registering people to vote. Expand the electorate.
Yeah.
When we do this, we see it every year this happens. Progressives get elected. When progressives get elected, climate policies are put in place.
You know, teamwork is so important. If you just have people that are just like you all the time, you don't grow. You really only grow by working with people who have different opinions or different ways of looking at things. And I'm finally becoming a little bit wiser old lady because I've started really listening to people who have a different opinion than me and hanging out with those people more.
Automated weather observation. Sky condition overcast, 8,500. Temperature 1 Celsius.
Hey, Molly. Hey, maybe we should talk about a plant.
Okay. I don't have a pitch by pitch topo, but we have some good, like this.
The picture.
Yeah, with the route lines.
Yeah. The shrine.
That along
ice
here, this snowfield, and then up through that cooler, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we think this area is not cornice, right?
Mhm.
But this is, and then this is a mushroom.
It sounds like not as good a weather as we were hoping for.
Now I think the question is just like, there's a lot of snow up there.
Yeah, that's a concern.
And a thing to keep in mind is just, I don't have as much experience leading in slough.
These are minor ups and downs, but you know, even something minor here, it all adds up. You know, just
That's
like a
what
few inches of snow and a bit of wind, and then it, you know, and it piles up, and you have spindrift, and we already have knowledge of one team who bailed because of spindrift.
Just spindrift.
Yeah.
What if we push this till around like 5 p.m. tomorrow evening, skied out, had more time to find the cache, because I'm kind of worried about that. One, it's giving us a lot of time. Two, we can see what it's like when it's most active with the sun. We can see if the sun's even on it.
Okay, we're giving ourselves 24 hours to do this route, to ski out there, do the climb, just wrap down and ski back. So 24 hours. So if we think the weather's going to be good until 5 o'clock Sunday, you know, then we would start at 5 o'clock Saturday, like you're suggesting.
This is now dinner.
Yeah.
And then we go to bed, and then this is
wake
no
up
longer
in the morning.
breakfast. So it's about 1 p.m. on a Friday. It was 0 to 15% chance of precip, and clearly we're under the 15%.
This is the best we've got for quite a while, so it's kind of, you know, we don't know what it's going to be like, but we're hoping that this is it. I think it was hard for both of us when we first flew into the glacier. There's this nervous energy buildup, you know? This is the biggest climb she's ever done. I really admire people like Molly, you know, people who have a disability, the strength that it takes to go despite that. A hero is not a person who's just always done well and had it good. I mean, a hero is actually somebody who's had a major struggle to deal with, and they've overcome.
Nice.
Awesome, thank you.
I feel really good about climbing that route.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be way more scared once I saw it, but it made me feel better. Kitty, we say fired up.
Yeah.
And then you say ready to go.
Ready to go.
Ready?
Okay.
Fired up.
Ready to go.
Fired up.
Ready to go.
Good job. You sound like you're at a rally.
Fired up! Oh yeah, what was my line?
I feel like I'm moving in slow motion.
That's okay. You know, we're in it for the long haul, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Molly.
It's so deep. Okay, I can do this. I can do this.
Yeah, you can.
We were at the base of the mountain, and I look up and I'm like, this route is steep. And that's just the start. First, you get up through this pretty deep snow, which was hard for me. I kind of feel like you're swimming. And then you cross a bergschrund. It's like a crack in the mountain at the bottom.
When you get to a good place right before you cross the shrine, maybe, I'm not in a good place. I'm crossing it now. I gotta get off this. Okay. I'm scared to commit.
It was a little bit wider than I thought to cross. I think that's around the time I just start deteriorating. A low-grade panic started to set in with the gear and the bulkiness, and really more than anything, my movement just being so off.
Hold on, I don't feel secure here. Hold on. Oh, you guys, this is freaky here. Why am I over here?
Ah! I place a screw, I drop a screw, I almost drop another. We get them back. And then my alarm goes off. And I think I'd set it to take my medication that night.
I'm gonna flip my shit about this alarm. I can't get the shit off my harness.
Damn it, shut the fuck up. All of these little things, it's like they just impact you in really big ways. If I had the cognitive resources to kind of manage it, I would have been a lot calmer and more deliberate, but it's like parts of your brain are just offline. And that's not the place you want to be in when you're climbing.
Oh my God, I am paying for the fact that I didn't train on ice with a pack. Holy shit. I'm very shook up. I'm very shook up.
It's 10:30, I just led the hitch. You know, the ice it likes to shatter, and so you have to feel comfortable on it to feel like, you know, moving on it and running it out. Snowing lightly, spindrift. Could be worse, could be better.
So, it didn't seem like the anchor was ready for a while.
Yeah.
I had like 15 feet of slack for like an hour.
Yeah, well, I was trying to pull up the orange rope and I couldn't pull it up. So that's the first thing you do is you pull up the tag line, and it was anchored in. I couldn't pull it up.
Big one coming, big one, big one.
Good to go, baby. Have fun.
Thanks for putting up with me.
Have fun, Molly.
Oh,
Have fun.
I want to climb this. No, I don't.
I went back to leading, but I left my pack and I was gonna haul it. all of a sudden, I felt just a lot better. My mobility was back, my confidence was back, my body positioning was good again. I climbed it pretty fast for me, trying to make up for lost time. But hauling my pack was a pain, and that's one of the things I underestimated. We had to be way more efficient, and so hauling that pack on every pitch wasn't really an ideal option. And around 2 a.m., I think it was, I made the call for us to turn back.
What'd you think of calling it here? I think the spindrift's gonna get worse.
The spindrift's gonna get worse.
Honestly, I have to learn how to climb with a pack and come back. I can't.
Molly, you know what? Can I just tell you how wonderful you are? I mean,
honestly,
Molly,
this is on me that I can't.
Oh, well, Molly, I can't even put into words how much I think of you.
Oh, thank you.
This storm's coming in and the spindrift's gonna get worse.
Yeah.
But I just have to just say, that I just have the utmost respect for you.
Oh my God.
Molly, you are badass. I swear to you, freaking badass.
When I was descending in the night under all this spindrift, I kind of wondered, I might be too ordinary to climb here. And I think you kind of question that in all environments you enter, is that worthiness and that sense of belonging and that sense of adequacy. My friend sent me this quote, and it's you go to Alaska to get your ass kicked. And that's what happened. But you can't do it until you go the first time. And I knew that time was the first of me going for many times.
So we just got the call that we have to be off the glacier in 45 minutes. There's a big storm coming in.
There's a window of when the pilots can land on the glacier. It's always touch and go here at the very end because the weather is so variable and a lot of times these windows are so short. I don't know if I ever told you this, but you did a really good job.
Oh, thank you.
You're really fit and you're really strong.
Yeah.
And you really get after it, you broke trail the whole way.
Man, that is hard.
Yeah.
You know what they say?
That's why I let you break trail. Because I knew it was hard. I didn't want to do it.
We have these narratives in the outdoor community and more widely in society of there was a struggle and then there was a victory. We hear the hard part and we're just waiting for the conclusion that makes it feel okay for us. In Alaska, that's just not how that climb went. I also think that's just doesn't reflect how my life goes. There's no conclusive victory in my life. My illness is lifelong and incurable. But you don't try to climb something that's literally impossible. You have to know that you could get to the top. In the climate movement, we need to do the same. You have to know that solution, that promised land, it is there and we are well on our way. That's why, when you lead with hope, When you realize that we can clean up the air for everybody, that we can put people back to work, that we can invest in communities that have been left behind, that we can address racial injustice, social injustice, economic injustice. When you know that's possible, and not only possible, it's like waiting for us. We're getting there. Then it keeps you fighting another day.